I'm Ray Benjamin, and this is the In the Cut podcast, where professional writers come to break down their favorite episodes of television. This season is all about the Emmys. We'll be covering a variety of prestige shows that have been honored by the Television Academy, from pop culture classics like Sex and the City and Atlanta to newer faves like The Bear and Andor. We'll do a deep dive into structure, character, and dialogue to truly understand what makes a good story stick with us long after it ends. Be sure to hit that like button, follow, and subscribe so you can tune in with all the great conversations we have coming up. To kick off this season, we're going to start with the Emmy-nominated series, The Diplomat.
We in the cut.
The Diplomat is a Netflix series that follows Ambassador Kate Weiler after she's sent to the UK during a crisis. The second season was Emmy-nominated for Outstanding Drama Series. When a Stranger Calls is the first episode of the second season. After an explosion injures Kate's husband and colleagues, she rushes to the hospital, but things are not as they seem. Kate believes the British government is involved in the bombing and must work through her grief to find the true culprit behind it all. And here to help me unravel this political thriller is the talented Steve Harper. Thanks for joining.
Thanks. I'm super happy to be here and to talk about this show.
Me too. It's a good one.
Yes,
so Steve was a co-executive producer on Tracker on CBS and
That's
also CW Stargirl.
Yes.
You've written on a host of shows, too many to go through. One of my favorites on that list was God Friended Me on CBS. Great show.
A ton of really good shows. I'm really fortunate to have gotten to work on those shows.
Yeah, and you created a web series I saw which was nominated for an Emmy. So that's crazy. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm still
old.
Pinching myself, It's like, what?
And you also are a coach of writers and artists through Your Creative Life.
That's right,
So people can check that out as well.
That's right. I like to help people, as do you.
Yes, I do. So before we get into breaking down The Diplomat, we're going to play a little game called Fade In, Fade Out.
All right.
Basically, I give you a variety of quick rapid-fire statements about London, since The Diplomat is set in London.
Yeah.
If you're here for it, you'll flip your sign and say fade in. If you're not a fan, flip it.
And
we're going to say fade out.
Fade out.
So the first of London, UK themed things is beans on toast.
Fade out.
I agree.
No,
that
thank
British
you.
food, I had to be
I never
there.
even heard of that.
Yeah, they have some weird breakfasts. I'm not a fan.
That's breakfast?
Yeah, they eat a lot of beans.
No, thanks. No,
Baked beans over there.
I don't need that.
So, fade in or fade out, taking the tube.
Oh, fade in, for sure.
Me too.
Tube
the
is fun.
public transportation in London,
Sweet.
Superb.
Yes.
I wish it was that good in LA. It is not.
Yes.
Fade in, fade out, fish and chips.
Oh, fade in.
Okay.
Fade in on some fish and chips.
Fade out for me.
Oh, really?
I like the chips, but they can keep the fish. I just want to eat the fries.
Well, if they're really crispy.
That's true.
Then
I'm not
into it.
that into fish.
Oh, I see.
I've been forced to eat fish lately because my doctor said I need the omega-3s.
I see. Salmon's a good
I
fish.
eat salmon. That's
good,
the only one I'll do.
Right.
None of the others.
Fair enough.
Fade in, fade out, drinking tea.
Oh, fade out.
Oh, I'm drinking tea today.
I know. I'm not a warm beverage person.
I can respect that.
Yeah.
There's iced tea, though.
I know, but still. In fact, my doctor said years ago, I used to drink a lot of orange juice and sodas, and so it's all water now. Water
That's
water
true.
with
It is
lemon.
very acidic. It's probably not. But I feel like there's some, herbs in there. I'm like healing myself.
I don't know. It feels weak to me.
That is
like,
valid.
what is this?
That is valid.
Yeah.
And last, 24-hour clock military time versus, AM, PM.
Oh, fade out.
See,
I don't
I'm
need that.
fading.
Are you?
Not because I don't really know it off the top, but I feel like it does make things easier.
It describes it a little better.
Yes, I think it's better. I don't use it, but if I was raised
you
that way.
appreciate it. You're like, okay, I get it.
I would like it.
Fair enough.
I feel like I have
That's cool.
know you better now.
Bonding, yes.
So on this show, I invite the guests to come on and they choose the episode they want to talk about. So why did you want to choose The Diplomat?
I think the first reason I chose The Diplomat is because I know the creator. So Deborah Kahn is a friend of mine, and I actually, when I was an actor before I was a writer. And when I was in acting school, Deborah was in the class below me.
Oh, what?
And we bonded. I've known her for a good, 20, 30 years, something like that.
That's
something
crazy.
like that, yeah. So what's really great to me about the show is that it really combines a lot of the things that I think are very Deborah and also very Deborah's history as a writer. Mm-hmm. So she wrote on Grey's Anatomy for a long while. She wrote on The West Wing. She wrote on Homeland. And this show really mixes a lot of those things, which I think is beautiful. And I also think that Kate Weiler is very much like Deborah Kahn.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Well, Deborah's pretty cool then. I've never met her, but she has to be pretty badass.
Well, I don't know if
Kate Weiler.
Yeah, I don't know if she's saving the world. Although maybe through the show I don't know. But the thing is, she did describe, and I think this is so her. She did describe, she's the kind of person who will drop food on a dress and then be like, oh, what do I, oops, I just did that thing. Or what do I do, to clean it up? And she's kind of a jeans and T-shirt person the way Kate Weiler
loves
is.
a pantsuit.
She does. She does.
She does not like dresses.
Not at all.
A selling, a recurring joke in the show is how she refuses to wear these dresses.
And she rips one in that season finale of season 2. So
I'm glad you picked this
moment.
show. It's a show that I didn't watch before this episode, but in preparation, you picked an episode from season 2. I watched all of season 1, and I found it to be very clever and a great show.
It's very smart and very fun, yeah.
So one of my favorite things about this show, honestly, is the cinematography. I think the locations they pick are so beautiful. The interiors, just beautiful buildings. And a lot of times when you have sort of exposition-heavy shows, I think the locations help, I guess, add some visual interest to that. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I also think it is nice to see London and the UK, and there are some beautiful locations. I think, to me, my favorite thing about the show is that is the character stuff, because I don't consider myself like a policy wonk or anything like that. I do like to listen to the news a little bit, but the show explains so much of what's going on based on the characters and how they're clashing and who they are and how they betray each other and the questions about who are you really, and all of that stuff is really fun in kind of a screwball comedy way, and that really, I think, highlights the stuff that's going on politically that you can either completely absorb or not absorb. But those personality things, I think, are fun and funny.
I wholeheartedly agree. So starting off, going through this episode, it's a direct pickup from sort of the season finale, the prior episode, where this bomb explodes and it injures Kate's colleagues and husband, Stuart, Ronnie, Hal, and then it unfortunately killed the British dude,
my goodness.
Merritt Grove. He came in and went quickly.
Yes, that's right.
But as you mentioned, that moment where Kate gets the news, she's at a gala in Paris. She's wearing this beautiful gown. She's trying to unzip it, but she can't get it. So she just sort of hulks it, just rips through the gown. I know you love that moment. Why did it stand out so much for you?
It's a fun moment because it's all about how she, she's really, she's also taking this guy's clothes and she's going to change into, pants and a jacket, which she's more comfortable in. And it's about ripping apart the artifice, which I think so much of this show is about. She's just pushing past the sort of pomp and circumstance to get to the heart of what she needs to do. And she's so impatient with those things. And it's funny, whoever sees that, I've never seen somebody do that in real life. And I've rarely seen somebody do that on TV. So I found it a very sort of Kate Weiler kind of moment.
Yes, it was so Kate. You mentioned how she is really not here for the artifice. She just wants to get to work. There was a great moment in the previous season where, she has to do this photo shoot. And it was a similar sort of moment where she's like, why do I have to wear this dress? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do that? that. And it's great to see that sort of, especially a female character that's just there to do the work, and they're not into all the frills.
Yes.
But sort of she's forced to participate in these sort of things.
And she's willing to play the game some of the time, so that's also fun. You know, her husband mentions about how this is sort of like a Cinderella opportunity, and she's like, I don't want to be Cinderella. But then when it becomes useful politically, like to convince people to keep her around, she's willing to be that character and play that character. And I sort of feel like, you know, I relate to that. And I think a lot of viewers do, in terms of who we have to be in the real world. Right. The politics versus who we'd rather really be.
That is a very good point. So after that, you know, Kate shares her theory with the CIA operative Idra that she thinks Trowbridge, who's the prime minister, may have something to do with this bombing.
Yeah, which is crazy.
A wild accusation
it is.
To make.
Yeah.
We see Kate visit Hal shortly after that, and it's a really tender moment. And even though I would say their crumbling marriage is really the driver of a lot of stories in the season, you can see that she still has love for him in
they
this
still
moment.
love each other.
How do you think the show balances that relationship drama versus the larger political drama so well?
Well, it similarly to the thing with the dress and the Cinderella relationship, it's like she needs him in some ways, you know, and she doesn't want to have to need him. She wants to get rid of him pretty soon, you know, but also people are grooming her to be the vice president. And the vice president's got to be married, got to have this sort of, you know, image that is part of what she's up to. So I kind of love the back and forth of that. We also feel like, you know, from season 1, where she's getting, you know, super close to her British colleague.
Yeah. Oh, I knew the moment he came in, I'm like,
right?
Ooh, they're going to get it in.
Yes, right. So they were becoming closer and closer and closer. You know, she's really building that relationship with Dennison. And then this accident happens, you know, and suddenly we see her lean back toward Hal. And that's a really interesting, you know, push me, pull you kind of moment that I think works really well in the series.
Yeah, I think this show really has everything. If you're into just the relationship drama, you'll love that.
Yes.
If you're into more of the political stuff, you can have both.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I also think that Kate she really cares about what she's up to. You know, she really has a genuine desire to help, to make things better in the world, and to get to that job. And so I kind of appreciate that too. It's like she's not just going through the motions. She's really invested in trying to get to the mystery of everything and trying to make things right for her country, for the people who she works with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So off that, Dennison gets some intel that, you know, the Brits are planning to kill this Russian mercenary that may have something to do with the attack on the warship. That was sort of the impetus of the whole series, starting off with Kate coming to London, and they think maybe he could be involved in this attack, but they want to kill him. Dennison doesn't want to kill him. He wants to bring him in
to find out what's going on.
To find out the truth. So that's sort of our first little clue that, you know, maybe something's off. Why are they trying to kill this guy that knows things? And then we have this really clever scene with Kate and Idra in the hospital.
I love that scene.
Yes, it's so good that they're sort of worried about surveillance. Maybe their audio is being surveyed. So they use the hospital whiteboard to sort of communicate with each other, which I also agree was very cleverly done.
It's a great device, partly because I think, you know, again, one of these things about the show is if you can't follow stuff, sometimes Kate can't follow stuff.
That's
you know,
true.
She's always like, wait a minute, I'm in London, like what's going on here? She's so much more used to being in war-torn places and all that stuff. So quite often in this show, she's either catching up with what the traditions are or explaining a theory to somebody else. And it's a great way to both have her do that in a character sense, but also have the audience come along with what's happening. You know, so they're almost playing like, you know, categories or like, you know, Pictionary with the whiteboard as she describes this idea that, you know, that the British, she thinks, they're the ones who are going to try to kill this guy, and that they were the ones also behind this bombing, and, you know, throws all of this suspicion on the prime minister that I think is really it's fun and it's also really well explained.
Yeah, to your point, there is a lot of exposition in this show, and it sort of has to happen. It's world building. It's world setting. Most people have no idea of what's going on in these diplomatic relationships. So, like, to your point, a great technique when you have these shows that require a lot of explaining is to have that character that acts as sort of an audience surrogate, that they're new to the world, so that they can ask these questions in a way that feels authentic, and it's not just someone like info dumping, well, here's how it works all the time.
And what's cool, I think, in this show is that person who doesn't know bounces around. Like, sometimes it's Kate. She's like, what's the deal with this? Sometimes it's Idra. Idra ought to know everything, but the fact that she's not caught up on Kate's theory means that Kate has to explain it to her in this way that then explains it to us.
Exactly. It's a very great way to get that information out.
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments in this episode was when the new character of Mrs. Trowbridge is introduced. She just seems like very formidable. I was getting Lady Macbeth sort of vibes of puppet mastering in the background. I think a reoccurring theme in this show is really showcasing these brilliant women who are often either sidelined or forced to be like puppet masters to the men who actually hold the real power. Do you find that too?
I love that about that character, and about the way those scenes work between she and her husband, where he's the prime minister, but he comes in and she's like, sit. And he sits, and she says, you should call a cobra, which is this, the meeting. And he's like, why should I? And then he's like, call a cobra, So I love that too. It says a lot about the kind of dynamics also that Kate and Hal have. Like, sometimes, she's smarter than he is. Sometimes he's smarter, and it seems to bounce back and forth, And you get the same kind of energy with Margaret Roylin, who ends up being like the focus of all of this. It's like, well, she knows exactly what's happening, who's doing what to whom, and we've got to find her. She's missing. And that's a great engine to have in the middle of this episode.
Yes, I was thinking, man, Trowbridge has some mommy issues. Like, he only listens to these old ladies. Like, he will not listen to anyone else. Yeah. But an older woman tells him, and he's like, he snaps into shape.
Yeah, because I think he knows they're smarter than he is.
That is true. Maybe, maybe that's it. So when Hal wakes up, Kate's there, and she realizes, to your point, that she told Margaret Roylin about the Lankoff situation. And that she could maybe be involved in this bombing, because we know she's kind of sketchy and not the most scrupulous character. She's off. And so during this emergency Cobra meeting, they also reveal that it wasn't the Russians or the Iranians who did this. The detonation, like the explosive, came from British people, British soil, and that seems to be a shock to people. But Kate's like, hey, this is what I was thinking already. So it just confirms her expectations. One of my favorite moments is when they're back in the hospital and this aide is, wanting to talk to Hal. He hands him the computer, and Hal sees that picture of Kate in the red gown with Denison at the gala. And he's just like,
oh, something's going on here.
Yes, and he just knows from looking at that picture, and he doesn't really have any dialogue. All the emotion just plays out on his face. I think, as a dramatic writer yourself, do you have any tips for how writers can convey emotional beats without using words?
I think they do it so smartly in the show, and on some level, when you write that kind of thing, you got to trust your actors. But I also think that there are shows that I think we can all pay attention to that do that more often than others. For example, I'm a big fan of The Good Wife. And Alicia Florrick in The Good Wife has a different methodology as a lawyer than other people. She's more concerned, she's caring, she's a mom, she asks questions, she listens. And so not only do you get that when you watch scenes of The Good Wife, but when you read the scripts of The Good Wife, which, I grabbed a couple of scripts from, somewhere. I don't even know where I got them. But you can see how well they describe, like how she leans forward and she like leans back, or she listens, she smiles, she hands somebody a cup of water. Like there's all this stuff that they're doing that's silent, but that certainly like greases the wheels and makes a change within the scene. And that's really fun to do.
Yeah, I think often as writers, we're taught to write words. Sometimes you can over-rely, I think, on words. In that scene of Hal was like, oh, I'm jealous of my wife.
Right.
Like it would have came off as very, corny on the nose. I always tell people if you can get the same point across without using words, that's probably better than to have words.
Yes. One of the smart things, too, I think, about this first episode, also I jumped back to watch the pilot of the series, is that in the pilot, Hal is trying to get Margaret Royland to talk to Kate, and that gets subverted. So what's interesting is there's something that feels really satisfying, a season later, to see this sort of united moment that's about to happen. We don't even get it, but we know that she's on the phone and that Kate's on the way, and and there's something really satisfying about that.
It is. There's this show is very much a slow burn.
Yes.
Even in that first episode, the series premiere, like you said, they bring up her possibly becoming the vice president.
Right.
So when I saw that, I'm like, by the end of the season, she's going to be the vice president. That does not happen.
Right. They go a totally different way. Yeah.
So you really have to keep watching, and it's not an immediate quick satisfaction, which I feel like we don't see that much of in shows today.
Yeah. I think it also goes to the idea of, and I think they do this really well, and I'm sure you've encountered this too, the more I've been writing pilots, at some point in my career, my manager and agents and stuff, they started to ask me more questions about what would happen in series. Now, I haven't written the series, but they want, all of these folks want those things to be planted in a way that can feel like we're really going to grow something dramatically that's interesting and complex, right? So I feel like this show does that really well. And when I went back and watched the pilot, suddenly I'm seeing how many characters, how many mentions are played out much later in season 2. Or even characters who I didn't necessarily remember from season 1 are actually there at the beginning. So all of that planning goes into a really good pilot, and into a really good series.
That is a good point. I'll go back and rewatch now that you brought that up. So then Hal is questioned by Idra. We learn that, unfortunately, Ronnie has passed away.
Yes.
And Kate is sort of tasked with alerting Ronnie's family first that this happened, unfortunately.
Yeah.
R.I.P. to Ronnie.
Yes, right.
When Stuart wakes up, Idra's there to greet him. This is also one of my favorite moments of the episode when
they're such a great couple.
They
I
are
think.
when he calls her Pi, like the number, because she's little but goes on forever. I laughed so much at that moment. I think this show is excellent at injecting, humor into these very intense situations. There's always funny moments. There's
lots of humor.
Yes.
Yeah, it almost feels like screwball comedy.
Yes.
It almost feels like His Girl Friday or something like that. And I think that's one of the things that makes it really palatable, even though it's got all this global intrigue. It's also about couples sniping at each other.
Yes, and relatable,
in really
the
smart
moment
ways.
In the first season where Kate, does spill the water on her suit and she just frantically trying to rub it out before her meeting with the president. She can't do it, and her friend sees her, and the first thing she says is, "I didn't pee." It's so funny.
Yeah.
I think it's refreshing. As someone that writes both comedy and drama, I think that the best dramas always have a bit of humor.
Yes.
The best comedies always have a bit of, darkness in them. So as a drama writer, how do you suggest we find these moments to inject
I
some
think
humor?
these are all really human moments. The whole notion of, everywhere one goes, they're like, I feel like I have these moments of, interesting self-consciousness. So I'm sitting here talking with you, we're having a great conversation about the show, and every now and then I'm like, am I sweating? How do I look? Where are my hands? And so to incorporate that kind of humanness in a character on the page is, I think, part of what we can do to bring humor in. And I feel like that's what that's what Kate's doing all the time. Like, she's in this, she's doing it well, she's a professional, and she's also like, am I doing this? Am I doing this wearing this outfit? What am I doing here? Or how do I deal with this? And that part of it, I think we can always inject for different characters and find some humor.
Yeah, just be relatable. I feel like we're all awkward people trying to pretend that
That's
we're
not. That's right, that we're not, yeah.
So at the end, we get that phone call, as you said, to the hospital. It's supposedly a friend of Kate, but we learn that friend's been dead for 15 years. So it's clearly not that lady. And then we reveal that it is Margaret Royland. And you're just like, oh.
Yeah.
And this show has a lot of cliffhangers, especially when I was watching the first season. It's like every episode, you're like, something crazy happens.
Yeah.
I think a lot of writers want to incorporate cliffhangers. Obviously, it just makes people want to keep reading.
Yep.
But I think it sometimes can be hard to do without feeling sort of gimmicky. Do you have any tips on how to effectively add a cliffhanger?
I think there's both, there's a way to put it in the series, in the scene, but also pull back from it. And I feel like that scene with Margaret Royland does it really well, because the guy investigating finds out that this woman has been dead for 14 years. But then when he just goes to Kate and he's like, you need to, it's kind of like, you need to talk to her. Like, they don't gild the lily. It doesn't become this big, they don't talk about it 3 times.
Yes.
Right. It's kind of like he knows that this is a really important phone call, and very soon she's on her way. And then we see that it's her. And so there's this, there's a light touch to it, and they're not like beating a dead horse or like pounding it into the ground. So I think we can do that. And I also think it's about how we set things up. If we set up these little hints about what might be coming, then at the pilot we can turn things around and be like, did you see that? It actually reminds me of the pilot of This Is Us. Like, we get to the end of that pilot and suddenly we're like, oh, these people are related? Like, okay. Didn't see that coming, but it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So the cliffhangers sort of have to be seeded, so it feels satisfying at the end and is not just like a trick that you're just going to completely throw off something just for shock value. It feels like it's earned.
Yeah. And I think we can test those things out. They can sprinkle things in a way that we think works, then get readers and friends and people like that to let us know whether they were surprised by the change, or whether they saw it coming, or whether they liked it or whether they didn't. And we just continue to kind of pull back and, paint a little bit more deeply, or erase a few things to make it more surprising and effective.
Yes, feedback is essential to writing. I meet so many people that are just starting out, and they're trying to rewrite things on their own, and I'm like, you can't do that. You need to get other people to read it in order to have proper information. If you're only siloing things through your thoughts, you're too close to it.
Yeah, I agree. And really, I never know. Like, I'd love to say I know I'm doing good work. But, half the time I write something, I feel satisfied, but I'm also kind of like, I'm not really sure if this reads to somebody who isn't me. And that's the thing. It's always about the translation to another human being and what they're bringing to the page or bringing to the screen. And I can't know that without asking.
So true. Well, thank you. It's time to give the royal wave to the diplomats. But would you stick around and answer a few questions about your career?
Sure. Happy to.
Stand by.
We're back with Steve Harper. Thanks for sticking around.
Yeah.
So you earned an Emmy nomination for your web series, Send Me.
Yes. Well, the show got an Emmy nomination. My lead actress, Tracy Toms, was nominated for an Emmy. She was fantastic. So grateful to have her in the series. She's also somebody who I've known for quite some time, actually. And I was really happy she said yes. And it was she did a great job. It was a magical moment to get that nomination.
So what was the process of crowdfunding for that, producing it yourself? That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. How much time you got?
As much as you need.
I was in between shows. I had actually, I'd moved out here in 2010 from New York to get TV writing work. I already had an agent and a manager, but that first year, nothing was happening. And then I got into the CBS Writers Mentoring Program, which was great. And then I got my first job, which was Covert Affairs. And I was on Covert Affairs for 2 seasons. And then after that, it's like nothing. Like 3 seasons of nothing. And I kept writing stuff and doing things. And somebody said to me, a guy who'd been a showrunner and done a lot of work, he said, if you want to be a showrunner, make a show and run it. Like, that's the task, like to do the thing, to create the thing. It's like, okay, what an interesting idea. And I had this idea about the web series, which is about time travel and slavery and this woman who sends people back in time to visit the antebellum days. And I first wrote it as a short story because my agent and manager were interested in sending out more material. I'd just done a pilot. They were like, do you have something else? So I made this 10-page short story knowing that I was headed toward this web series thing. And the short story got me a ton of meetings. And people were like, what is this? And, and I was like, okay, now I really have to make it. And then the process was just like little by little. I wrote the script. I asked Tracy right away because I had her in mind. She said yes. She helped me find other people, and I reached out to people I knew. There were people she knew. The more people who came on board, they all started asking people. And then I read this amazing book that I still have on my shelf called Crowdfunding for Filmmakers. Okay. It's a generic title, but it's really smart and fun. It's by a guy named John Trigonis, who was a crowdfunding consultant for Indiegogo. I don't know if he does that anymore. But the book is really smart. And it's the only book in recent memory, actually, that I've read in a single day. I was on planes going, I think, to and from New York. I read the whole thing. Wow. And it's got case studies. It's funny. He's like, do this, don't do that. You need a team. Plan it out. You need a schedule. Here's how to do your social media. And I gathered a group of people and decided that I would pay them from the proceeds of the crowdfunding itself. So I was like, you're making this, you're making that. We signed deal memos, and then we had this campaign for, I think, a month where we just kept, each week had a theme, and we just, raised the money, raised as much money as we could. I put some of my own money in, and other donations came from other places, and we had enough to make something. We didn't raise exactly what I wanted, but we had enough. And interestingly enough, one of my producers, a person who I approached, who was a friend of one of my directors, had worked on Grey's Anatomy. He was one of the chief lighting people on Grey's, and he did some tremendous work, like totally amazing, helpful. He helped us. We actually sort of secretly shot on the set of Grey's. Not on the set of Grey's, but in the building, like in the basement. Cool. And we sort of built that space where the office takes place was in the basement of where they shoot Grey's. And we had a bunch of Grey's people involved, and Sada Ramirez came on as an executive producer, and it was really a dream. It was really a dream. So we were able to make it with the money we had, and then we started submitting it everywhere. One of the interesting things I'll say, especially about the Emmy nomination, which I didn't know and people really ought to know, is that just like anything, the Emmys is a contest. You have to submit yourself. Like I always thought, you're going to, like being blessed on high. Somebody's like, you are worthy. But it's like, no, you fill out the application, you pay a bunch of money, and you send your stuff in the different categories. And I wasn't going to do that. We entered all these other festivals. I was like, the Emmys, that's just ridiculous. I don't have the money anymore. I'd spent all my money, and we had the edit and all that stuff. And my mother said to me, I'll give you the money. Just apply for a few categories. And I was like, all right, Mom. And then we got nominated, which was amazing. Oh. Yeah.
So I love that. What I'm hearing is that people should not wait for opportunity from others, that you should create your own opportunities, that you can do this through crowdfunding, but you need a team, you need collaborators, and sort of the more passionate you are, you'll probably attract people that care and equally match your attitude, and to not sell yourself short because you weren't going to apply for that Emmy.
That's right.
Mama had other plans.
She had other plans, yeah. I mean, I think the other thing is, I think it's really important to be professional. Like, you know, I was an actor before I was a writer, and a union actor, and I was also in it. So I talked to SAG-AFTRA, and I got permission for us to do what we did, you know, at a certain price point. As the writer, I talked to WGA. I had a WGA contract for myself, right? And everybody there was, I think, one DGA person, we got a waiver from the DGA to participate, and everybody who didn't fall into one of those categories in a union, I had a deal memo, and the deal memo basically said, I own this piece. You're doing this as a work for hire. Your compensation is X. You know, maybe it's just sort of credit in the credits, or maybe it's $100 a day, or maybe it's whatever. And I had those deals with everybody I worked with. So there was we handled it entirely professionally.
Yes.
Because I think it's important that we respect each other. It's like, otherwise we're all going to burn each other out and be like, I'm never working for you again, you know.
I like that. Be professional. Yeah. A lot of people don't do that.
That's right.
They just hit up the homie, come over, but if stuff starts to, you know, gain traction, then you have none of that information in place. It's important to have all those contracts in place before you take off. I
always say to people, you know, my coaching clients and such, that if you're going to work with a friend and you're like, oh, you know, they're my friend and all that stuff, and we're creating a thing, but we don't have any contract, 5 minutes later, somebody knocks at that door and is like, I got $1 million, I want to buy your idea. Who gets the $1 million? And you're going to work it out then? You're going to argue about it? Like, are you going to say, well, I came up with it first? Or that's why you got to have those agreements in place.
Yes, I've been in those situations.
Right.
It's not fun.
Not fun.
Get those contracts in order.
Right.
So you also offer coaching to writers and artists through Your Creative Life.
Yes.
Check it out.
Check it out.
But if you could give one piece of advice to someone that's an aspiring screenwriter, what would it be?
I think it's really about not going it alone. You know, everybody thinks, especially writing is a solitary thing, and so on some level we've got to sit by ourselves and create our work. But that doesn't mean that it stops with us. You know, I think it's really important to reach out to a community, to get support, to learn whatever you don't know. Like, bring people in, get readers, get coaching, take a writing class, you know, do a reading, get actors together. Like, you're only going to find out so much in your own bubble, you know, and it's a collaborative medium. So unless you're, you know, I think if you're writing a novel or short stories, that's different. There's probably a smaller group of people you might invite in. But as a person in this industry, it's all about collaboration. You need people. You need actors. You need directors. You need, you know, producers. You need feedback. You need all that stuff. So incrementally reach out. And it doesn't mean you have to ask everybody. I'm not a fan of like going on social media and being like, anybody want to read my work? Which a lot of people do. I'm like, what do you?
I say no.
My goodness. Yeah, right. It's like walking onto the subway and saying, anybody want to read my work? You'd never do that. Or anybody want to date me on the subway? Like, that would be. You don't want to date those people. Not a good idea. So I'd say be careful and cautious about it, thoughtful about it, but you got to bring in people.
I love that. Thank you so much, Steve.
You're welcome.
Really helpful episode for folks.
It's great to talk to you.
You too. Thanks again to our guest, Steve Harper, and to the writers of this episode of The Diplomat, Anna Hagen and Deborah Kahn. If you enjoyed this podcast, give us a like, give us a follow. You can watch the video on YouTube or listen to the audio on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Check out all our socials. The links are in the description. And if you'd like to advertise or sponsor the podcast, shoot us an email, podcast@inthecutla.org. Until next time, stay in the cut.